Guys, I think I have a match. I'm sure of it. The lighthouse, the rock, and the restaurant all fit the doubloon. That must mean that the rich stuff is near the restaurant.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I'm so excited to talk about this film. What's up, guys, and welcome to Movie Importance Flashback Reviews, where I take movies from the past, break them down, and tell you what I think about them. If you like what you see, of course, hit the subscribe button. Join Movie Emporium, hit that notification bell at the top to find out what's coming next, and comment below on any video you watch, including this one. So, Goonies is the most watched film I've ever watched in my entire life, outside of maybe like Real Genius, which I'll talk about this year. It's a film that is very, very important to my childhood, to a lot of people's childhoods. It was a film about adventure. It was a film about fantasy. It was a film about intrigue. It was a film about kids who were my age, who were swearing and going to look for pirate treasure. It was a film that just brought out the mind and the chaos of everything you go through as a child. And on top of that, it's dealing with real world issues of people who were being separated because of some greedy rich asshole. It was one of those types of films, and it was a seminal moment for me growing up. I watched this movie incessantly. I think there's, like I said, Real Genius and Ghostbusters and maybe Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Back to the Future, stuff like that, were some of those films where I would just play them nonstop. I mean, I watch Goonies at least 4 or 5 times a year because I enjoy the movie so much. It's just so entertaining. It has such great villains. It has such great bad guys and good guys, and the plot, as nonsensical as it is actually kind of entertaining. Chris Columbus, who wrote the screenplay for this, is not what, to me personally, the greatest director writer of all time, but he's written stuff like Gremlins. He worked on the Harry Potter movies. He deserves credit for developing a project that is so much fun and so entertaining and so goofy in its own right, and it just has such an eclectic cast of characters. Richard Donner, who is known for doing stuff like Lady Hawk and Superman, and of course the Lethal Weapon series, was strangely brought on board to direct this movie. I don't know what Spielberg and Kennedy and Marshall were. Maybe they thought he had a whimsical nature to him. I don't know. It's a very interesting director to put on a kid's project, basically. But it works. I mean, Richard Donner is a fantastic director. I love the Lethal Weapon series. Superman is also a great film. Lady Hawk, stuff like that. He is a director that has, a great eye for visuals. And the visuals are bleeding through, like, incessantly in this movie. But, this was a movie that was a story based from Steven Spielberg himself. It feels like a Spielberg movie in a lot of ways. And the essence of just the wonderment of childhood, the wonderment of looking upon a world that is changing, looking upon a world that, is so much bigger than it seems as you're an adult. The fact that you can go back and watch this movie and be my age, which is almost 40, and just kind of look at it and realize, like, the adults are dealing with some really prescient issues that are so, like, I can't imagine, Mikey and Brand's parents and what the nervousness of what they're going through, the fact that they're like losing their home to this really rich guy who wants to build a golf course. I can't imagine the nature of having to take their kids away from their friends and having to leave their home and so on and so forth. And that is just a very interesting thing, because when you go back and watch this film, when you're a kid, for instance, you just think about, oh, we're gonna go see One-Eye Willie, or we're gonna go underground, or we're going to, like, escape from the Fratellis, and we're going to do this and this and this, and the characters are able to say shit. It's just like every kid's fantasy, and then they're having to leave their home, so they're having to leave their friends behind. It's really kind of a fascinating look into a film that is basically just an adventure piece. I mean, it really is. But when you look at it from an adult's point of view, it really is about leaving everything behind because of some person who doesn't really care. And the payoff in this movie and the way this movie ends is fantastic. It's beautiful. It has such a nice feel to it. The fact that they had found One-Eye Willie's treasure, the fact that the Fratellis were basically took everything away from them. But Mikey has this bag that has all these jewels in it, which is going to save their house, which is going to save everything. It's just such a perfect ending to a movie that does have issues when you really kind of watch it, with the plotting and structure and the fact that the movie's it's like really dark when you look at it, from a simple fact that there's murder, and they're going to put a kid's hand in the blender, and we have these people with guns chasing after these kids, and they're going to murder these kids. They throw them throw them off the plank. I mean, it's a really dark movie when you think about it. The Fratellis are not good people. They are very menacing characters, but they are my favorite characters in the movie because they are well-rounded. You have Ramsey, who plays, Ma Fratelli. You have Robert Davi and Joe Pantoliano, who play the sons, who are always bickering with one another, who are just the perfect, like, Looney Tunes style characters, where they're just, like, either falling on wood, which, like, hits their balls, which is really funny, or they just, like, can't seem to, like, work well with one another. At the very beginning of this movie, we have a situation where Robert Davi's character is breaking out of prison, and they can't get the door open, and the police are coming after him, and he has to jump through the roof of the car. It's just a simple fact that Joe Pantoliano and Robert Davi are messing with the handle at the same time. I mean, those characters are so well written and so perfect for the movie like this, and it makes for a very fun and energetic type of character arcs and stuff like that. These characters aren't the most magnificent villains ever made, but what Robert Davi and Joe Pantoliano and Anne Ramsey are doing is just such great work. And I love how they have this character, this son or brother, who they call Sloth, who's played by Brolin by John Matuzak, who is basically disfigured, kind of like the Elephant Man. And he is a character that is so, you feel for him. You have so much passion for his character because he's so abused and stuff like that. There's abuse in this movie. I mean, this movie is really not for young kids. It really is for, like, the teenage group and up. I mean, there's abuse and murder and stuff like that going on, and, like, people losing their homes and, like, cursing and stuff like that. So it's like, it is your typical Spielberg 80s movie, but it is definitely not for a subset of, like, 4 or 5 to maybe 8-year-old kids. This is like 10 to 20-year-old kids. So I mean, it is what it is, but like I said, the bad guys in this movie are so fantastic, and there's so many great character moments with them. But the other thing that's insane about this movie is the fact that it's 35 years old. It came out June 7th, 1985, and to sit back and, like, look at a movie like this, think about it being almost 40 years old to approaching 40 years old, is something quite unique. There's not many films that you watch out there that really capture your attention, really capture the wonderment and feel of what you wish you could go back to, and that's what Goonies does so well. I mean, it's just an amazing thing to watch, and it's the amazing ability of what Spielberg and Kennedy and Marshall were able to coax in a time frame of, like, E.T. and Raiders of the Lost Ark and all these films that came out in the 80s. I mean, it's such a perfect way to represent what childhood is really like. I mean, these kids in this movie are so much fun to watch. So you have Sean Astin, who is playing Mikey, and Mikey is kind of the character that kind of is the leader of the group. Yes, his brother, who is played by Josh Brolin, who plays Bran, is his big brother, but Mikey is the one that pushes the group forward. He's the one that keeps the story moving, and his wonderment of trying to figure out how to save his family's home and try to keep them, in Portland, Oregon, or Oregon, wherever it's located, is a really kind of sad but very kind of awe-inspiring thing to watch. Because when he's with his friends, we have, of course, Corey Feldman, who's playing Mouth, and Mouth is one of those, what you expect him to be. He's, like, goofy, and when he talks, he has the ability to kind of put off people, but he's such a charismatic person in his own right. The way to see him, like, be able to speak Spanish, to the ability for him to, like, just kind of keep the group moving, to kind of make fun of people but kind of still be on their side. That's what makes Corey Feldman's character so kind of fun and unique. He's like the second half of Mikey's character. Mikey's more reserved, he's more outspoken. For instance, when, like, he's talking and Brandon, Mikey's mom, is taking the Rosita through the house because she's going to clean the house. Mouth, basically, he gives all this information. This is another reason this is definitely not a kids movie, because the information that he's giving Rosita in Spanish is very disturbing. I mean, it's basically like a sex slave torture house, which is really funny because she's just basically showing what needs to be clean, what needs to be fixed, which is really funny on its own right, because the mom is like, oh, we want everything clean before they tear down the house, which is a really funny mindset. I think it's funny. I think Brandon, Mikey's mom, is pretty hysterical in these scenes. To see Rosita just give this like look of horror as she's walking through this house is fantastic. And it's just those scenes and like how he's more centered and more realistic in his nature is just a lot of fun to watch. And of course we have Data, who's played by Jonathan K. Quan, who you actually might remember from being in movies like Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom as Short Round. He was a character that Spielberg actually recommended for this movie. But I love Data. I think he's one of the best characters in the movie, just for the simple fact is he's really inventive and he's really creative, but nothing he invents works. The flashlight thing where it's able to project like really bright balls, which makes everybody blind. Nothing works. He's like, the first time you see him, he's like repelling from his like house to Mikey's house, and he crashes into the house, the screen door. And then, for instance, when like the credits are rolling, he's like, he's attaching himself like this suction cup thing to a trash can. He ends up falling in the trash can as the police cars, drive by. He's just such an amazing character. He's so goofy and innocent, but I love that he actually comes through sometimes with the ability to use these gadgets that he has invented, because he's trying to be a lot like James Bond, and sometimes it works and 99% of the time it doesn't. So it's really a lot of fun. And of course, the one that everybody loves, the kid that everybody truly kind of enjoys for stuff like the truffle shuffle and the ice cream bit, and of course the fake storytellings and stuff like that, is Chunk, who is played by Jeff Cohen. And Chunk is a very interesting character. He really is. He's not my favorite. Like I said, I like Data, like of course Mikey and stuff like that, but he's a character that gets short shrifted throughout this entire movie until the very end, when him and Sloth are actually kind of chasing behind the Goonies characters. But just to see him, like, when he's like kidnapped by the Fratellis, and he is, telling the story about puking or using fake puke up on the balcony, when he finds the ice cream, which is actually holding the dead guy, the dead FBI agent or whatever it is, to like his ability to just like tell these wild stories, and him being kind of the outcast of the movie. It's just fun to watch. It's goofy. It's over the top. He has this problem where he breaks stuff. So Mikey uses him to break this, picture frame that has the map for One Eye Willie. It's a really kind of goofy character, but kind of makes the movie a lot of fun and energetic and over the top and silly. But because he befriends Sloth and he kind of takes him in at the end, which doesn't really make a lot of sense as a family member, it really gives Chunk a lot of heart, which is not prescient in a lot of these Goonie characters. Yes, they're going after this treasure because they're kind of greedy in a lot of ways, but they want to save the Goondocks, as it's called. But Chunk and his relationship with Sloth is really kind of awe-inspiring, because he sees at first he sees Sloth as this, Frankenstein style person who's very ugly and very, distorted looking. And then at some point they just become good friends, and he accepts Sloth for who he is, because I think Chunk actually sees Sloth in himself as a character that is kind of pushed into the background of these other characters who are more popular in a lot of ways. But I really like the dichotomy and the chemistry between Sloth and of course Chunk, which is really kind of funny when you think about it, Sloth and Chunk. So it is what it is, but I really, the whole Baby Ruth stuff is really nice. The fact that Chris Columbus, when puts in his script, when Chunk is calling the police station, he actually mentions about, when you put water on them, like the Gremlins characters. So it is a lot of fun. It is a lot of, unique adventure, pirate settings and stuff like that. So I really enjoy what they're doing. Like I said, Chunk's not my favorite character, but I really enjoy the Truffle Shuffle. The Truffle Shuffle is really, really famous. It was used in a lot of memes and stuff like that. So I think now, outside of Sean Astin and the main adult actors in this movie, Josh Brolin, who plays Bran, is the most recognizable actor in this movie. He's the most famous. Of course, he's played Thanos in the Avengers movies, and Bran is the older brother of Mikey. He is the more stern person. He's very into weightlifting, to, you know, taking care of himself. He's very much a high schooler in aspect. He doesn't have a car and stuff like that, so that is a point against him. But he's a guy who kind of integrates himself into the Goonies later on, but he's always trying to put, Mikey in his place, trying to keep him, level headed and stuff like that. He's definitely the big brother, so he picks on him and stuff like that. He's very into the Kerri Green character who plays Andy, who I think she's friends with the Troy character, who is like the main a-hole in this movie. I think Troy didn't. I'll get to that in a second. But she and of course Bran have like this underlining chemistry together, which kind of plays out, and they start becoming more romantic and stuff like that. And Kerri Green is fantastic. She's fun in the movie. She is Kerri Green. She was a very one of those ladies, one of those females who most kids of my age of that time were really into, so on and so forth. But it's fun to see them two, play off one another. And she's more of like a supporting role, so she does have her moments where she's like freaking out and stuff like that. But she's fun. She kind of is level headed in the group and so on and so forth. So there's not really much to talk about with her character, but the fact that she is like integrated with Bran and stuff like that makes her still part of the Goonies group. And the last person to talk about in this movie is Martha Plimpton, who actually was in Raising Hope in the TV show that was actually quite popular in the early 2000s. There's an interesting kind of relationship between her and Mouth that doesn't really lead into like a romantic relationship, but you can kind of see it developing because she and Mouth are always picking on one another. This is the great thing about the chemistry of these characters. They all know each other from school. So you are seeing it from the outside, but you know that these characters have some kind of past and history together. To watch Mouth and Steph, who is a Martha Plimpton character, work off one another, it's a lot of fun to see them like fight with one another, to pick on one another, to shout obscenities and words at one another. You really start to see like the romantic chemistry that is working there, and you can kind of see at the very end when they're rescued, and she kind of is into Mouth, whether she realizes it or not. But it's a lot of fun to watch. But yeah, she of course the Andy character, they're good friends. They're with the soccer team and stuff like that, and it's really nice to see their characters play out. But they're more, like I said, they're more supporting characters, background characters, so they have their moments when they play out. They have their quips, their story arcs and stuff like that. But the four kids are the main part of the Goonies group, which I love the idea of the Goonies in general, just for the simple fact of they're a group of like outliers. They're a group of random like school people. You have the nerds and you have the jocks and so on and so forth. But they are all related in the fact that they have a central goal and they have the ability to work well off one another. You can have the jocks work with the nerds, the jocks work with the outcasts and stuff like that, and it still works because they're all people. They're all people on a specific adventure, and I think it's great. I think the idea of what the Goonies is, I think when we were growing up, that's what we wanted. We wanted a group of individuals, a group of friends that would be like the Goonies, that would, be there for each other, work well with each other, and have great fantasy and adventures and stuff like that. And that's what makes the Goonies so great in its essence. But the adventure itself is just so fantastic. These kids, they find this map and they discover that the map is kind of situated, the beginning point is at this lighthouse, which is a diner, which is of course closed for the winter. And Mikey, which I made a joke of in the beginning because of the whole Star Wars Rise of Skywalker stuff, thank you Trivial Theater for that. And he is able to configure where they need to go, which is into this lighthouse, which is where this group of the Goonies meets the Fratellis, and this is where the journey starts. This is where they go into the underground, where they go underneath the thing to go into the cave area and stuff like that underneath this wherever they're situated, the locations where they live. And that's where like the journey is mostly takes place. There's stuff with like they're messing with the pipes of this country club, which is really funny because Troy, who I actually haven't talked about for it yet, Troy is one of these characters that didn't really need to be in this movie. He's there as a kind of stumbling block for Andy and Bran. He actually could be considered a murderer or a person that almost murdered someone because he attaches his hand to Bran, who's on this little kid's bike, which is really funny. And he starts speeding up his car, and Bran, who's on this tiny bike, falls off the side of a ravine and falls off the side of a hill. That's really messed up. Troy almost killed Bran because of his stupidity and his a-holeness and stuff like that. It's the fact that, the way Troy and his friends talk about Andy and the Goonies kids when they're up on that well is just really disgusting. But to see get his payback with the whole, pipe situation, they're messing with the pipes and he gets like exploded like a cherry bomb out the water. It's a lot of fun. And the stuff with the falling boulders and the Chester Cobblepot stuff, where I thought was really funny. You never really think about this when you're a kid, but he has a baseball card of Lou Gehrig, which is probably worth a lot of money, and these kids don't realize it, which is what kids do. They don't realize how much stuff is worth. And then it leads into, of course, the well where all the money is, and there's kind of like a breakdown of these characters. Mouth, who is just wanting to stay in this town, is basically like taking all his money, but this is not where the treasure is. But then like it leads into, for instance, the Fratellis are chasing after him, after Mouth and all that, all that stuff that went through. It leads them to like the piano, stuff like that, which is a really fun sequence, which is really disturbing because they hit the wrong notes, like they could collapse and everybody could die and impale themselves into spikes. It leads into, like I said, a really funny sequence where, of course, as they're climbing over this log, Data spills a lot of oil on the log, and that's where, of course, like I said, the Fratelli brothers fall and hit their nuts. And it leads into like a really cool slip and slide thing where they're all going down these like different paths, and you just fall out into the main cave, which is where One Eye Willie's pirate ship is being located. Now, a lot of the stuff is really strange for the fact of, there's a big ship that nobody's ever thought about discovering. Like, if these kids who have the ability to find a pirate ship just by reading a map, is it because adults just don't really pay attention to stuff, kind of stuff? Who knows? But it's a really kind of weird, strange thing to really watch. But, it is what it is. So they find this big pirate ship. It's every kid's dream to find a gigantic pirate ship with bounds and bounds of treasure. Like, they find all this treasure worth billions of dollars, I'm sure. Millions, billions, or whatever you want to call it. And of course, there's a big confrontation with the Fratellis, who basically make the kids give up all the treasure, and the kids basically escape with their life because the Fratellis are, they have no peripheral vision when it comes to this money. And so Ma Fratelli picks up this thing that basically sets off this trap that lets the ship somehow go off into the sunset and stuff like that. And it's fun to see them finally get arrested. It's fun to see all, the back and forth between the groups and stuff like that. It's fun to see Sloth get the upper hand finally to become, the guy who actually takes down the Fratellis themselves. We get to the very end after everything's said and done. We have, of course, the police and the news media and all the kids, reuniting with their family. It leads into like a really, like I said, really nice sequence where Mikey has put all these jewels in a bag that you completely forgot about, saves the whole town. Troy and his father, who's of course the a-hole father, the a-hole businessman who's going to take over and build the golf course. And it's a very sweet ending. Like I said, all the families are united. Everybody's safe. Everybody's sound. The Fratellis are arrested. Sloth is apparently adopted into Chunk's family. And that's the end of the movie until we see the pirate ship coming across the sky, or coming across the horizon and kind of going off on its own. And that's probably the weirdest moment. I mean, there's a lot of weird moments where, character moments and development and situations. I mean, the characters are not the most well-written characters, which is whatever. It's a kid's movie in essence. You kind of get over the humps and stuff like that. But the ship thing is always really bothered me. Like, who is navigating this ship? Like, did a big stream of air, a puff of air, just blow the ship out of the cave itself? I mean, unfortunately, like I said before, you kind of have to look past these things because it is an adventure film that has it is what it is. But it's like going off into the horizon. So I'm guessing at some point the Coast Guard or the Oceanic Observatory or whoever, Washington D.C., whoever is going to take care of it, will eventually bring the ship back into port, and it'll be used as a historical significance. I'm sure it'll be plundered because all that treasure is still on that ship, unless it fell into the ocean or something like that. I don't know, but it's a really weird thing to have your movie end on. I think the fact that just a kid being safe and helpful and unique and stuff like that, but I don't know, it is what it is. It's a kids movie. So but overall, the adventure of this movie and the idea of this movie is a lot of fun. It's exciting. It does so much for the imagination. It has such an exciting look and feel. These characters are so relatable, even though they're going on an extremely insane adventure. And it's the Goonies. It's a movie that everybody that I know remembers and loves and enjoys. It's finally getting a 4K release, thank God. And yeah, it's a movie that has at least one character you love in it. So but that's it. I mean, the movie made $67 million in the States, $124 million worldwide for 1985. That's pretty good money. It's, a couple $100 million now. So it was a movie that considered a cult hit, which is really strange because I don't consider a cult hit. I consider a movie that has gained an audience, which I guess you can consider a cult hit. I don't know, but it was put in the National Registry in the archives for film, so I consider a movie that is just a lot of fun, enjoyable, and will always go down as test of time as a movie that you can sit back and show your kids and have a lot of fun. So, but there you go. That is my take on the Goonies, which is now 35 years old. That is crazy. Congratulations on reaching that milestone, making me feel old. So but anyways, thank you once again to Trivial Theater Triv for giving me that great opening, which I wouldn't even thought about. I would have probably done something like the Truffle Shuffle or something, which I know nobody wants to see. But anyways, comment below what you think of the Goonies. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Who's your favorite character? Like I said, Data is probably mine, as well as the Fratelli, so on and so forth. Also, if you like this video, hit that like button. If you didn't, of course, hit the dislike button. Whatever. Like, dislike, whatever, as well as any other video. Also, subscribe to Movie Emporium if you enjoy this channel. Hit the notification bell at the top. Find out what's coming next. And comment below on any video that you watch, including this one. But otherwise, see you guys on the next video. Peace out. What's up, guys? Thank you so much for checking out Movie Emporium. I really appreciate it. If you want to, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification button and the bell at the top. Find out what's coming next for Movie Emporium. Also, check out these 2 videos. They're amazing. I think they're awesome. I think you'll enjoy them too. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.